Hello friends, welcome to my channel Q Analysis and I am your host Prashant Kumar. Today we are going to talk about test planning in Agile. Agile test planning, a lost art. Friends, today's topic is very important for all those Agile enthusiasts who practice Agile methodologies and think that they want to deliver a very good product, a high quality product, so they perform a lot of testing methodologies while practicing Agile, but somehow they fail to achieve what they are expecting. And one of the basic reasons behind such failure is missing test planning, or a right kind of test planning is not in place, because of which the whole idea of Agile and software testing in Agile fails. So let's see how exactly you can do test planning in Agile. To start with, I'll show you this cartoon strip wherein it's very much evident that whenever it comes to the requirement, there could be hundred of features. And then no human or no manual tester would be able to test a product with that level of complexity. So, good point. Add one more to the list that is easy to use, isn't it? Exactly, this is what is happening in today's scenario with so much of evolving competition and market being so tough. So many requirements are being posed at a very fast pace. So at that point of time, it becomes very hard to test until unless you have some kind of plan in place. And you can see in the middle one, the guy who is responsible for testing is saying agile test planning is a lost art. Agile test planning is a lost art. Exactly, this is what I keep on saying. Lack of proper planning and inadequate testing. These are the two main reasons because of which Agile keeps on failing. With the Agile approach, planning is a constant state during all the project, and successful Agile teams typically expect to commit at least 20% of their available work hours during working on planning. Same way, Agile is all about delivering a good quality, in fact, I'd say a high quality or best quality software on time and within budget. Testing should be an integral part of the software coding and building process and not just afterthought that happens after the coding is done. So these two features, these two things, they are very important and they should be considered by every team who is practicing Agile so as to ensure that their Agile methodologies, they are not failing. Let's talk about the test strategy. Test strategies serve a purpose, but they don't focus on the sprint. Strategies are big picture. They give you a bigger picture of the whole testing process, how exactly the testing is to be conducted at the organization level, drives behavior and set the boundaries, outlines automation approach, test data management, defect of bug management, identifies large risks. So in software test strategy, most of the time you get the bigger picture and it talks about the approach, management, test data management, bug management or defect management, and identify the larger areas. But it is not pinpointing the specific sprint which you are using or which you are planning to deliver or which you are developing. That would be covered under test plan. Let's see in our next slide, which is test plan value. Test plan value is the testing scope. Agile test plan will solidify the customer and team what they have agreed upon. They help to identify the gaps in thoughts and expectations, and they also provide all the details required for the acceptance of the working software. So software test plans should always be in place for every sprint whenever you are planning to deliver something, and it helps you to identify the gaps and set up the expectations. Two very important points to one to note and one to remember. Customer collaboration is throughout and continues at the demos and reviews. If something changes, make sure you update your test plan as well at the same time. Remember, the goal is for a working software, the idea that has now changed, so your plan will also probably change. So any point of time you see there is a difference in the expectations and the thought process of the requirement, at the same time, your test plan should also be updated. With this, we move on to our next slide, wherein we are talking about quality over velocity. Now, quality of testing and test velocity, these are two very important concepts which many people they talk about in current scenario. They want to deliver fast, they want to deliver at a very high speed, but at the same time, I personally think maintaining quality is very important. In fact, sometimes it is more important than the velocity. So test plan help to create a common kind of thinking process, and whole of the team can think about quality first. Many think agile is all about velocity. No, you have to deliver a good product. If you're delivering very fast but you're delivering a shitty product, nobody cares about it, right? You need to have a very good product, a high quality product, and that if somebody is paying for it, I believe you should have a high quality software for your users. Building the quality in will improve velocity and efficiency and drive down the cost. So in case if you are having a higher quality and you are having a high speed, it will increase your efficiency. At the same time, since bugs should be found in the earlier stages, so cost of maintenance and cost of development will decrease. It will go down. Higher quality, higher speed, higher efficiency, and lower cost. So simple, isn't it? It doesn't work the other way around. So quality, I personally believe, is important, but you cannot say something with a something with a high quality can have high velocity, but at the same time, something with a high velocity does not ensure that you have a high quality all the time. So it doesn't work the other way around. Agile testing phases. So let's talk about few agile testing phases which are involved as a part of our test planning. A test plan should have components that help facilitating all these phases. So what are these phases? These phases are requirement and design phase, stories, features and verification of these features phase, system verification phase, and acceptance phase. We'll talk in detail about all these four phases in our coming. We'll talk in detail about all these phases in our coming slides. Phase one: requirements and design. I have a plan. You know. Exactly. Plan now and update throughout. Plan elements include scenarios to be tested. You have to have all the scenarios that you're planning to test. Separation of testing environment, unit, functional, or some kind of other interdependent units or testing activities. Automation selection and plan, what kind of automation framework, what kind of automation tools, and what is the plan for automation. Manual selection and plan, how exactly you're planning to perform the manual or functional testing. Out of scope items, all those items which are out of scope for your testing and which you are not going to touch. Dependencies and assumptions, anything which you think is a dependency or which you are assuming for your testing or for the releases, they should be mentioned. Test data needs, stubbing and technical debt, any kind of stubbing or technical debts, I'll talk in detail about it, wherein you have certain to-do list for the technical team to implement, and acceptance sections. So these are the few features, or these are the few elements that should be considered, and we'll talk in detail about these components in my upcoming slides. First one, facilitate discussion. Some questions to ask during the discussion. So at any point of time, whenever you are having a discussion within the team, you should ask some questions. What test does the product owner want to see to confirm working software? What tests do the team feel are more important to run based on the knowledge of the system? Team is well aware because they are developing it. Product owner is aware of the thing because they are knowing the whole concept and they are knowing about the business, they are knowing about the product, so they can tell you what are the tests they want to be there in the plan, and what negative cases are necessary. All those breaking scenarios or negative scenarios, they should be covered. What test will be automated and which tools, and with which tools. This is very important, that what automation tool you are going to use, and what are the test cases which you are planning to automate using those tools. I'll give you an example. If you have a API, then you can use Postman, and you are using functional testing, then Selenium, UI testing, Selenium or Cypress. And at the same time, if you have some backend related testing, then you can use some Python script or Shell script. So it depends. What are the different kind of automation tools which you're using, and what are the tests you're planning to automate? They should also be included in this discussion and should be noted down in the test plan. What test can I manually test due to complexity? So I personally believe every time when you have a new functionality coming in picture, it is not very stable and it is changing on a very frequent basis. in that very moment, in that very time, it is not a very good candidate for automation. So such kind of complex scenarios which are developed for the first time and they have certain complexity level, they are very good candidate for testing manually, and once they stabilize, they can be tested via automation. Where do we expect to find the most of the issues? What are the key section or key areas where most of the issues will be covering? Because it is more related to the impact analysis. So in case testers, they are aware of the impacted area, it's good. If not, then developers can anytime help them with the knowing what are the expected areas to find most of the issues. What part need exploratory testing? So sometimes you do the complete thorough testing, sometimes you do exploratory testing. So you have to have this plan in place that not everything can be thoroughly tested because of time and cost, and not everything can be exploratory tested, but what is to be tested through what mechanism and what testing methodology, everything should be discussed in advance and noted down in the test plan. Document the scenario details. So think about all the scenarios, start closing the gaps and clarifying what is to be tested. List down all high-level test scenarios. You should include individual unit-level components, easy to get buy-in, and then should include functional tests, end-to-end scenarios. So you have all the scenarios listed down, and then you can figure out, okay, for this, whether we are covering it or not. Identify whether you will manually test or automate the test. Are we manually testing due to complexity or due to some challenges? Summarize why you are manually testing a specific scenario, and are we automating for ease of use and repeatability. So you have to identify the scenarios, think about the coverage, you have to have the high level of test coverage, and then you have to see, okay, how are we testing it? We are testing it manually, we are testing it via automation, we are testing it via some script, we are doing a mix and match approach. What is the approach and why are we doing it? Is any scope, is anything which can be done in a better way in upcoming release? All these things can be noted down and should be noted down in your test plan. Automation or manual testing. Automation or manual testing. Automation and manual testing. Add a summary within your plan noting why you choose to test manually, and hopefully automation first and foremost whenever possible. Consider automation decision criteria is based upon following components or following main reasons such as reuse. Most of the code should be reused. Complexity, if it is very complex, it is a good candidate for manual testing. Less complex, good candidate for automation testing. Overlap, if you have overlapping areas, and again same thing has to be tested again and again, it is a very good candidate for automation. Information value, if it's a highly critical information and you cannot have a human error to be tolerated over there, so it's a best candidate for automation. Stability and coupling, so for anything which is stable and which is well coupled, it can be automated. And dependencies, if you have a lot of dependencies involved, in that case the workflow becomes a bit complex, so automation may be delayed, but if it is simple, then it is a very good for candidate for automation. Same way, if you have a stable system and all the dependencies are very much clear and you don't have unknown component, then you can go ahead and automate, no need to do it manually. So these are the different manual and automation related information which you should enter in your test plan. Out of scope items. Now, till now we have been talking about what is to be covered, what are the items which are important, and how you should test it manually or via automation. But then this section of test plan, which is out of scope item, this is also a very important section which talks about what you are not going to test, what is not going to be covered within your testing approach, what won't be tested, why you won't be testing it, and if not listed, can end up with the scope creep, scrambling to the test items at the end and did not get identified. So why it is important? If it is missed out, then it may happen at the end of your software testing, you'll figure out cycle, agile testing cycle or software testing cycle, you'll figure out that there are something which are missed out, which was not considered and which was not mentioned somewhere, that it is out of a scope. So if it is not out of a scope, then it is within the scope. And if it is within the scope and it is not planned anywhere, then At the last very moment, you have to go ahead and test it, right? And this may lead into some kind of ambiguity, some kind of problem with respect to testing, development, and last time fixes, all those stuff. So in order to avoid it, please make it clear that you have to have this out of scope section well defined in your test plan. Dependencies and or assumptions. I'm saying and or because sometimes you have certain dependencies and you may also have some assumptions. And sometimes it is necessary that in some systems you have dependencies as well as assumptions. Is there something the team needs to be successful in accomplishing the testing or obtaining acceptance? Now, there are certain dependencies. I'll give you a few examples. Are there multiple pods or teams developing, and you need another part to your solution in order to validate? Maybe needing an updated version, software version is a good example. Needing test data from another area. Maybe you are dependent on some other team outside your space to provide service or support. A very good example is third-party APIs which you use in your system, so you have certain kind of dependencies. Example, if you have any other example for the dependencies, please feel free to mention it in the comment section of the video. And regarding example of an assumption, I'll leave it up to you, or maybe I can give one or two example. For example, uh, you assume that all the systems they are working fine and they don't have any issue. The input coming from all the other associated system is working fine, so that post this assumption you set up your test environment and you go ahead and start testing. It may happen that actually in production, whenever you're planning to release, there's something wrong, and because of any third party dependency or something goes wrong from somewhere else and whole of your deployment is frozen or something is blown out. So these are the kind of assumptions which you assume, and these are the few example for the dependencies. Feel free to share a lot more dependencies or assumptions which you have seen it in your project or at your organization. I'll be very happy to know about them. Test data and technical debt. Test data is something which is very important. I have a separate set of video on test data, what is test data and how exactly test data play a very important role in software testing. Test data, they call out for a specific types of data that you need in order to complete the testing in the sprint for the scenarios. Mock data would be called out if being used. So if you have some kind of staging environment, you can use mock data. If it is not a staging environment, you have a pre-release environment or pre-production environment. Over there, you have data from production, which you keep on using it for your testing purpose. So these are a good example of test data. And now we'll talk about the technical debt. Indicate anything in this section that will need to be updated or changed later on, such as stubbing an interface, mocking a test data. So there are many things while you're testing, you figure out they are technically some challenges, or you need some kind of support from technical team, or you need to improve something on the technical front, such as stubbing of interface or mocking a test data. All these things should be mentioned under technical debt section, and be sure to choose technical debt wisely. Postponing items until later can become very costly. So you have to choose them very wisely, and then once you're done with the release, work along with your team in order to get your technical debt resolved. Acceptance criteria. I personally like acceptance criteria a lot because it helps to ensure that the whole software has been developed or whole of the requirement or user story has been developed in exactly the way it is to be accepted or to be used by the users. There is a separate set of video for acceptance criteria. It's a 5-minute video. You can check out in my channel videos. It's a very interesting one if you want to learn more about the acceptance criteria. Input under control history. So you have certain acceptance criteria and you have certain versions for them if they have changed. Sign off of this sprint plan indicates acceptance of the plan. Each sprint will have acceptance defined by the team, including BA, business analyst, product owner, tech leads, and QA. Learning the team should consider while signing off. Have we identified the right scenarios? Have we created the appropriate test coverage to satisfy the acceptance? This document should be a part of conversation and included in the acceptance. This is a very important part. So every time when you sign off acceptance criteria and team is signing off At that point of time, you should always think about the coverage, and you should always talk about identification of the right scenarios, or if at all there are some kind of missing scenarios. Securing approval helps to ensure alignment and increase the effectiveness of the acceptance. So once the sign off is done for the acceptance criteria, everybody is on same page, and it helps in the alignment and increases the effectiveness of acceptance. So this is very important. Now, phase 2. In phase 2, we talk about the story and feature verification. You have certain user story or features which needs to be tested and validated and verified. Start your test execution based on the scenarios and readiness of the code. As soon as you have a code ready, you can start to test it. Refer back to your plan. Team will be creating unit test. Testing will be staggered based upon development. Write automation test. Update the test data sets. Conduct manual test validations. Create stubs and ensure the features are working fine, validate the component interactions, discover defects and correct and retest. So this is basically a kind of testing for the user story. As soon as you have a user story, it is ready to be tested. These are the steps you should mention in your plan, and you should follow, or whosoever is the testing team member, they should follow in order to validate a user story or a feature when it is being developed. Phase 3, system verification. Now, system verification focuses on the acceptance side. Wrap up any end-to-end testing of the features, run regression to validate prior features are not broken, ensure regression sets are updated if needed, remove stubbing if possible, if at all there is any stubbing and you don't need it because the individual system or individual features are not being tested, system as a whole is being tested, so remove any stubbing if possible. Continue to correct and fix the defect critical ones. If something which is critical or high priority, that should be fixed then and there. Something which can be postponed and something which is medium or low and it doesn't seem to be very important or impacting a lot of users, then it can be postponed. Update the plan with any additions or changes and socialize to the team. So if in case there is any kind of updation or changes to the plan, please share it with your team. Hence, after this phase, the whole system related information, system related regression testing, end-to-end system testing, and dependencies, what kind of tests are being done, and what are the changes they have been done with in terms of system verification. Everything is mentioned and shared with the team, so everybody is on the same page. And last is about acceptance. In this phase, the finalizing of the test and securing acceptance is done. For example, agree upon the defects not making the release. So if in case you have some defects which are very critical and something which has been blocking the release, they should be discussed, it is fixed. And at the same time, if you have some defects which are not very important and you think, oh, development team and you have internal discussion, and QA and development team and product owners, they internally have a discussion and they feel all these requirements or all these defects, they seem to be like low impact and they're not very they're not very important to be done, so maybe they are not making into this release and you can just postpone or move on to the backlog. Conduct exploratory testing once the code or system is stable. Run a final set of regression or smoke test. Conduct the demo or show and tell using the test plan as a guide. So you have to talk about a kind of demo or show wherein you walk through all the components of your plan and get it accepted, and uh, talk about your test plan as a guide, share it with everyone. The next step is, which is very important one, retrospective feedback and change. This is a reflection step wherein you talk about all the things what you have done. Once you are done with it, team should provide feedback for the plan's effectiveness, discuss the challenges with the feature or components so it can be considered if there are changes around the feature in the future, and then you collect the feedback. Post the feedback, you update your test plan and you make the changes, and it is a collaborative feedback loop wherein you talk about the refinements, you have insights, and then you have ideas, you have feedback, and then again you keep on doing. This is a continuous process, you have to keep it doing on a loop. After every test plan, after every release, whenever you have a stable release and everything goes fine, have a retrospective meeting and keep on discussing about your test plan and see how effective it is. If in case there is any scope for improvement, you will take inputs from your team and implement it, make the changes, and redo this process again and again. Conclusion. With this, we come to the end of this presentation, and now we are talking about the conclusion, what we learned from our this whole presentation. Quality is the first thing that you should care about. Requirements and design work, they are important, but they should be done in a planned manner. Create a plan. Always have a plan, especially when you're working in software testing, you should have a test plan. Secure the acceptance of the plan. Use the plan as a guideline for demos to the product owner and also to your users. Seek feedback on the effectiveness of the plan and make the improvement so as to have a better and effective test plan for the future releases. These are the few important points which I can say will help you in order to make your software testing and in order to make your agile testing mechanism much more powerful and impactful. So I believe after this course, I believe after this presentation, you will be happily testing and implementing all these scenarios. So these are the few points which I consider very important for agile testing. And agile test planning is a very important part of software testing when you're testing in agile. I personally find it very helpful, which I wanted to share with you. If in case you want to learn more about software testing or you have any question regarding any of the testing methodologies, project management, test management, or you want any kind of guidance or mentorship from me, please feel free to connect with me via LinkedIn, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel if you haven't done so. Thank you friends, thank you, and see you in our next video. See ya, bye bye.